Picture yourself in a world where winter isn't just a season. It's a force that creeps into your bones, your home, your very breath. It's not the kind of cold you fix with a scarf or a hot drink. It's the kind that brings hunger, disease, and death right through your door, settling in like an unwelcome guest. Welcome to Boring History, where we don't just talk about the past, we pull you into it, right into the smoky, freezing huts of medieval peasants. Today we're stepping into their world, somewhere in northern Europe around the year 1100, to uncover how they survived winters that could kill as swiftly as any blade. This isn't about knights or castles. It's about ordinary people, men, women, children, who faced the cold with nothing but their wits, their faith, and each other. So, pull up a chair, maybe grab a blanket, because we're about to feel the chill of the Middle Ages. Let's start this story. You're standing in a village, the kind you'd find tucked away in the fields of England or France. The sky is heavy, gray, and the wind bites at your face like it's got a personal score to settle. Your home is a hut, a shaky thing made of sticks, mud, and straw, barely holding together under the weight of snow. The walls are wattle and daub, branches woven tight and smeared with clay, but they crack in the frost, letting the cold slip through like a thief. The roof is thatch, maybe sod if you're in a wetter region, but it leaks when it rains and sags when the snow piles up. Inside, the floor is just earth, frozen solid by January, turning to a muddy mess when the thaw creeps in. There's a hearth in the center, but don't picture a cozy fireplace. It's a pit, surrounded by a few stones, where a fire smolders, giving off more smoke than heat. The air is thick with soot, and every breath tastes like ash and desperation. You're not alone in this hut. Your family is here, parents, siblings, maybe a grandparent, all crowded together. And so are the animals. Yes, animals. Sheep, goats, maybe a pig if you're lucky, huddled in the corner, their breath steaming in the dim light. Their warmth is why they're here, not because you love the smell of wet wool or manure, but because their bodies might be the difference between waking up tomorrow or not. This is winter in the Middle Ages, and it's not just cold, it's a predator. Historians tell us that, in some villages, up to 1 in 5 people didn't make it through a single winter. Not from wars or plagues, but from the cold itself. A runny nose could turn into pneumonia. A cut on your finger could fester and kill you in days. A bowl of half-cooked porridge could poison you if the grain was bad. There were no doctors, no medicine, no radiators. If the water froze in your bucket on the way back from the well, you went thirsty. If the firewood ran out, and it always did, you were left with nothing but your own body heat and a whispered prayer. So how did they survive? Let's start with the hut itself, because that's where the fight began. These homes weren't built for comfort. They were built to keep you alive, and even that was a gamble. The walls were thin, patched with whatever you could find. Moss, rags, more mud. You'd spend hours stuffing the gaps, but the wind always found a way in. Windows, if you had them, were just slits covered with scraps of leather or cloth. Glass was for monasteries and lords, not for you. The cold wasn't a guest. It lived with you, settling into every crack, every corner. The hearth was your only weapon, but it came with a cost. Firewood wasn't free. The forest belonged to the feudal lord, and cutting a tree could mean a fine, a whipping, or worse. So you scavenged bark, branches, roots, anything you could carry without getting caught. And when that ran out, you burned what you had. Dry dung mixed with straw, old fences, even the clothes off your back. Chronicles from the 13th century talk of peasants burning icons just to keep their children from freezing. That's how desperate it got. The fire wasn't just for warmth. It was for cooking, for light, for hope. You'd keep it burning day and night, covering the coals with ash to save them for morning. If it went out, you'd have to start it again with flint and tinder, a task that could take hours in the damp cold. And the smoke? It had nowhere to go. Most huts didn't have chimneys, that was for the rich. The smoke curled up to the roof, slipping out through a hole if you were lucky, or just pooling around you, blackening the walls, stinging your eyes. But you didn't complain. You couldn't. Every flicker of that flame was a reminder you were still here. The animals in the hut were more than livestock. They were your lifeline. Their bodies gave off heat, enough to raise the temperature a few precious degrees. A sheep could keep you from frostbite. A pig was like a living furnace. You'd sleep next to them, share blankets, let their breath mingle with yours. It wasn't clean. Fleas, lice, and ticks were part of the deal, but it was necessary. Digs in places like York and Trondheim show animal bones mixed with human debris under the floors. This wasn't a quirk. It was how people lived. The animals weren't just for warmth, either. They were food, wool, milk if they survived. Losing a goat meant no milk in spring, no wool for clothes, no manure for the fields. So you protected them, covered them, fed them what little you had. Food was a constant battle. You'd spent the fall preserving everything, drying grain, salting meat, burying turnips in ash. But by January, the stores were low. You'd cook porridge, barley, rye, or oats boiled into a gray sludge. Maybe you'd toss in a turnip or a bone for flavor. The whole family ate from one pot, passing a ladle around. Meat was rare, saved for when someone was too weak to go on. Fat was worth more than gold. A spoonful of lard could keep you working through the cold. Bread was hard, gritty, sometimes mixed with ash or bone dust. You'd soak it in porridge to make it edible. Salt was for preserving, not seasoning. Spices? Only in your dreams. If you had dried garlic, you were rich. When the food ran out, you ate anything, tree bark, moss, even boiled leather. Hunger wasn't just a feeling, it was a killer, waiting for you to falter. Clothing was your last defense. Forget fashion, these were armor, pieced together from coarse wool, old sheepskins, scraps of burlap. You'd layer them on, a shirt, a tunic, a cloak, stuffed with straw for warmth. Shoes were a problem. Most wore clogs or cloth wrappings with grass tucked inside. They got wet, froze, caused frostbite. You didn't wash your clothes, water could ruin them. They were full of lice, mold, but they were your shield. You wore them until they fell apart, patched them, passed them down. In the dark, by the hearth, you'd huddle with your family, sharing body heat, listening to the wind, praying for spring. That was winter, a fight to stay warm, to eat, to live. But the story doesn't end with the hut. Let's step outside into the village, where survival wasn't just about you, it was about everyone. The village is quiet now, the paths between huts frozen into ruts of mud and ice. Smoke curls from every roof, or at least from the ones where the fire's still burning. You know your neighbors, not just their names, but their struggles. Who's got a sick child, who's running low on grain, who's got a spark to share. This is boring history, and we're deep in the heart of a medieval winter, where the cold tests not just your body, but the bonds that hold a village together. Let's walk through those snowy paths and see how the community, the faith, and the hard choices kept people alive when the world seemed determined to end them. In this village, you don't survive alone. Your hut is your shelter, but the people around you are your strength. The village is small. Maybe a dozen huts, maybe two, clustered together like they're huddling for warmth. Every family is fighting the same fight, and you all know it. You share what you have, not out of kindness, but out of necessity. If your neighbor's fire goes out, you carry a coal from your hearth to theirs. If they've got a jug of water and you've got a scrap of bread, you trade. Monastic records from the 13th century talk of villages pooling their resources, grain, firewood, even clothes, for those who had nothing. The church might hand out supplies from its stores, but more often, it's the villagers themselves, passing a spark, a turnip, a shred of hope. But sharing isn't always easy. When the snow piles up and the food runs low, the village faces choices no one wants to make. It's not written down, not voted on, but it happens. The strong, the young, the ones who can work or bear children, they get the last scraps. Men who can chop wood, women who can nurse, boys who'll grow into workers, they're the priority. The elderly, the sick, the weak, they're pushed to the edges. Chronicles tell of old men sent to the barn with a cup of water and a crust of bread, left to freeze quietly so the rest could live. Sometimes they chose it themselves, slipping away to spare the family. It's not cruelty, it's survival. If the village loses its strength, there's no one to plant the fields in spring. Faith is what holds you together when the choices get hard. The church doesn't offer comfort, it offers meaning. The cold is God's punishment. Hunger is his test. Death is his will. You pray by the hearth, maybe with a cross nailed to the wall, muttering words you barely know. The priest, if you have one, doesn't hold your hand. He tells you to endure, that suffering is your path to salvation. Sermons from the 14th century are blunt. Moan, and you multiply your torment. Endure, and you bring paradise closer. It's not poetry, it's a lifeline. You believe the fire in your hearth holds the spirits of your ancestors, that it's a bridge between the living and the dead. When the flames flicker low, you feel the weight of that belief, the fear that if the fire dies, so does your luck. Disease is the shadow that follows faith and community. A cough spreads through a hut in days, a village in weeks. There's no medicine, just herbs, wormwood, sage, whatever's left. You might call a wise woman, who brings her bundle of plants and whispers incantations. But it rarely works. The air is damp, heavy with smoke, sweat, and the smell of animals. Parasites carry disease faster than you can blink. A cold becomes pneumonia, a cut becomes deadly. Historians say some villages lost 10% of their people to disease in a single winter. Not an epidemic, just a hard winter. Death isn't shocking, it's expected. You wake to find a child silent, an old man stiff. You wrap the body in straw, carry it out if the ground isn't frozen. Sometimes you can't. The frost locks the earth, the blizzard blocks the path. So the body stays, propped against the wall, a reminder of what's at stake. Yet the village endures. You huddle together at night, sharing blankets, sharing breath. You cook together, eat together, pray together. If someone has a scrap of meat, they share it. If someone has a spark, they pass it on. It's not charity, it's strategy. A village that doesn't share doesn't survive. In that sharing, there's something human, something stubborn. You sit by the fire, listening to the breath of your family, your animals, your neighbors, and you know that as long as you're together, you have a chance. That chance carries you forward, to the small things that keep you alive, your food, your clothes, the daily grind of winter. The fire's still burning, low and smoky, and you're wrapped in whatever scraps of wool you've got left. This is boring history, and we're in the thick of a medieval winter, where every day is a fight to stay warm, to eat, to keep going. Let's talk about the things that keep you alive when the cold is closing in. The food in your bowl, the clothes on your back, the small acts that defy the frost. Food isn't about taste in a medieval winter, it's about survival. Without it, your body gives up no matter how many layers you're wearing. You spent the fall preparing, drying grain, salting meat, burying turnips in pits lined with ash. But by January, the barrels are nearly empty, and every meal is a careful calculation. Porridge is your lifeline, barley, rye, or oats boiled into a thick, gray mess. You might toss in a turnip, some dried herbs, or a bone for flavor. The whole family eats from one pot, dipping a ladle or their fingers. The elders get the biggest share, they have to keep working. Children get what's left, and women often give their share to their kids. It's not selfless, it's survival. A hungry child might not see spring, and that's a loss the family can't afford. Turnips are the backbone of your diet. They're not delicious, but they're everywhere, cheap, easy to store, filling. You stew them, boil them, or gnaw them raw. They go into every pot, every story of hardship, every tale of survival. Meat is a rare treat. If you had a pig or goat, you slaughtered it in the fall and salted the meat. But you don't eat it often. A piece of pork might be the main meal of the week, boiled to flavor the broth, then divided among the weakest. Fat is worth more than gold. A spoonful of lard or ghee keeps you warm, keeps you moving, keeps you alive. You smear it on bread, melt it into porridge, or eat it straight. Without fat, you shiver, you weaken, you falter. Bread is another staple, but it's nothing like today's. It's dark, hard, full of grit, sometimes mixed with ash or bone dust. You bake it on a stone by the hearth, and it comes out smoky, crunchy, barely edible. You soak it in porridge or water to soften it, or just chew through the pain. Salt is precious, used for preserving, not seasoning. Spices are for the rich. If you have dried garlic or dill, you're doing well. Milk is scarce. Cows barely produce in winter, and what little you get goes to cheese or sour milk for the sick. Eggs are rarer still. If a chicken lays one, it's a gift, given to a child or someone too weak to go on. When the stores run low, you get desperate. Chronicles tell of eating tree bark, moss, even boiled leather. Moldy grain is soaked and boiled into bitter porridge. It's not about taste, it's about not dying. Clothing is your last defense against the cold. It's not about style, it's armor, pieced together from whatever holds up. Wool is the foundation, spun by hand, coarse and heavy. You layer it on. A linen shirt, a woolen tunic, a cloak, maybe a scrap of sheepskin. You stuff straw or rags inside for warmth, sew on patches of old fur. These clothes aren't washed, water could ruin them. They're full of lice, mold, but they're your shield. Shoes are a problem. Leather boots are for the wealthy. You wear clogs, wooden soles with cloth straps, or wrap your feet in fabric, stuffing them with grass. They get wet, freeze, cause frostbite. Losing a toe is common, but you keep moving. Your clothes are repaired, patched, passed down. They're your second skin, worn until they fall apart. This is the daily grind. Scraping together food, patching clothes, keeping the fire alive. You sit by the hearth at night, the wind howling, the cold creeping in. You pray, not because you're devout, but because it's something to hold on to. You share your last scrap of bread, because you might need your neighbor's help tomorrow. You wait because waiting is what keeps you alive. Waiting for the snow to stop, for the ground to thaw, for spring to come. That waiting, that stubborn hope, is what carries you through to the end of winter. The fire's burning low now, the coals barely glowing, but you're still here, wrapped in your patched cloak, listening to the wind outside. This is boring history, and we're at the heart of the medieval peasant's winter, where survival isn't about strength. It's about endurance, faith, and the people around you. Let's sit by the hearth one last time and see how they made it to spring. Survival in a medieval winter isn't about being the strongest or the bravest. It's about being the most patient. You don't fight the cold, you endure it. You don't curse the hunger. You ration your last turnip. You don't scream when a child falls silent in the night. You bury them and keep going. This is the mindset of the peasant, forged from childhood in a world where suffering is the norm. Village records from the time are stark. No letters of grief, no cries of despair, just facts. A son died, a cow froze, the grain ran out. Life isn't something you feel. It's something you survive. Faith is your anchor. The church doesn't comfort, it explains. The cold is God's punishment. Hunger is his test. Death is his will. You pray by the hearth, a crude cross on the wall, muttering words you barely know. The priest doesn't hold your hand. He tells you to endure. That suffering is your path to salvation. Sermons from the 14th century are clear. Moan, and you multiply your torment. Endure, and you bring paradise closer. It's not poetry, it's a lifeline. You believe the fire holds your ancestors' spirits, that it's a bridge between life and death. When the flames falter, you feel the weight of that belief, the fear that if the fire dies, so does your hope. But faith isn't just about God. It's about the rhythm of the world. You believe in spring not as a dream, but as a fact. You've seen it before. The snow melts, the ground thaws, the chickens lay again. Your parents saw it, their parents saw it. This isn't optimism, it's memory. Every winter, you live for that moment when the first green shoot breaks through the frost. It's not joy, it's survival. You don't dream of a better life. You dream of a life that keeps going. The community is your strength. You don't survive alone. You survive because of the people around you. In the hut, you sleep together, share blankets, share breath. In the village, you share everything else. A man with straw gives half to his neighbor. A woman with porridge feeds the children next door. It's not charity, it's strategy. If your neighbor's fire goes out, yours might be next. If their children starve, who'll help you in spring? Monastic records tell of villages pooling their last scraps of food. their last sticks of wood. The church might give out grain, but it's the villagers who pass a spark, a turnip, a shred of hope. But community isn't always kind. When food runs out, when firewood is gone, hard choices come. The village decides who lives, not with votes, but with quiet agreement. The strong, the young, the workers, they get the last scraps. The old, the sick, the weak, they're left behind. Chronicles tell of grandfathers sent to the barn with a cup of water, of sick families locked in their huts to stop disease. It's not hatred, it's fear. Fear that one death becomes 10, that one weak link breaks the chain. Yet, there are glimmers of humanity. A village melting its bathhouse to save a boy, a widow given the last oats, a man sharing his only boot. Through it all, there's silence. Not peace, but endurance. You don't complain. Complaining doesn't fill the pot. You don't cry. Tears don't warm the hut. You don't give up because giving up isn't something you know. Psychologists today call it resilience, but back then, it was just life. You wake each morning, light the fire, boil the porridge, and wait. Wait for the snow to stop, for the ground to thaw, for spring. And when spring comes, it's not a celebration. It's a reprieve. The barns are empty. The graves are fresh, but you're still here. That's the story of the medieval peasant in winter. Not triumph, but endurance. They didn't beat the cold, they outlasted it. They didn't conquer hunger, they rationed it. They didn't escape smerth, they shared it, grieved it, and kept going. It was a world of fire and frost, faith and fear, communities that held together because they had no choice. So, next time you're shivering, think of them. Huddled by a smoldering hearth, waiting for spring, believing in a tomorrow they couldn't see. That's the history we bring to life here at Boring History. If the story pulled you in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What would you do to survive a medieval winter? Share your thoughts and let's keep exploring the past together. Until next time, stay warm.